Well, you can already see the snow accumulation working out in western Alaska. We did try to see a little bit of that in Anchorage today with our first flakes moving through this morning, but we do have some calm conditions beginning to settle in statewide with very benign weather, just mostly cloudy skies, very little happening. But we do have our consecutive days with lows at or below 32 degrees happening beginning today, with those lows hitting the 20s. So with our snow potential moving forward, we've already seen the bulk of it this morning, and that was hardly anything. So moving into Sunday, you see that dip with very low chance of snow happening, and then by Monday, it's going to start to increase. So we will have a chance to see another round of those little flurries moving on through by Monday, but for the rest of the weekend, we're going to see mostly dry conditions moving on through. So statewide, we're seeing those mostly cloudy skies moving on through from South Central all the way to Southeast and even into the interior. We're seeing more wintry conditions moving on through with the Richardson Highway, those mostly cloudy skies, as well as having all of that snow starting to push through. But you're noticing that these temperatures are really starting to dip down into the mid-20s, feeling like 19 degrees. So it is getting a bit chilly. That wintry mix, that wintry feel is already starting to move into the interior. So just looking at our satellite and radar, really nothing happening, not much going on. We have very dry conditions happening out west, and then you see some of this cloud cover moving on through into the interior. That's where we saw those mostly cloudy conditions moving on through. But just in general, we have our low pressure system sitting out in the Bering Sea, and this really isn't doing a whole lot aside from bringing in some windy gusts into the Aleutians and into western Alaska. But other than that, not a whole lot going on. So looking ahead, we have this low pressure system, as I had mentioned, that's going to bring in some of those windier gusts into western Alaska and then also bring some rounds of snow moving on through, but into South Central, really not a whole lot going on, and Southeast even drying out as well. So with our snow totals, even into the interior for the weekend, we've already seen traces of snow, and that's pretty much all that we're going to see moving on through just from today, even going into Sunday. What we saw today will be the bulk of the snow that we've already seen. So the interior and even moving up into the North Slope, that's where we're going to see a little bit more snow accumulate, but statewide, it's already gone. It's already starting to dry out just a little bit more. You can even see that with our rain totals, very dry conditions moving on through. But we also have a little bit more of that rain pushing on through as that low pressure system starts to affect some of the Aleutian Islands, but otherwise not a whole lot happening. Temperatures you can already see starting to dip down into the teens at 16 degrees in Kotzebue, 12 degrees in Anaktuvuk Pass, but then we're dipping down below freezing into South Central and into western Alaska all the way into the interior. So as always, Southeast and the Aleutians are still the only places we're not quite seeing those conditions, but those temperatures are trying to work their way down towards freezing with those lows sitting in the 30s, but mostly cloudy skies moving on through, more of those dry conditions starting to push out as that rain starts to settle into the interior. We're seeing those highs just in the 20s, getting a little bit chillier with the potential for flurries starting to move on through. And that's the same for the North Slope, seeing those temperatures in the low 20s, but out in western Alaska, very dry conditions moving on through with those mostly cloudy to partly cloudy skies, temperatures flirting with those freezing marks for those highs. But the Aleutians still staying a little bit warmer with those low 40s into the high 30s. Those lows are still not quite making it, but even for South Central, we're starting to dip down with mostly cloudy skies, temperatures sitting in the mid 30s to low 40s. But into the valley, we're seeing those colder temperatures moving through with highs into the mid 30s. And that's the same thing that we're seeing in Anchorage, those much colder temperatures starting to move on through. So, Michaela, I said I wanted snow, but I always forget that that also includes those really cold temperatures.
Yeah, I think that's what I really don't like about it, is it's just too cold.